Ideas shape the world. They give meaning, direction, and possibility. I'm Willie Peterson, former CEO, Columbia professor, and author of Leadership, the Inside Story, an exploration of the principles that have shaped my leadership journey. Some ideas last for centuries. Others emerge and redefine how we lead. This is Ideas That Matter.
Let's take a look at overall leadership. It's universal in your opinion. Tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah, it really occurs in every aspect of our lives as we struggle with issues and overcome our obstacles in life. And it occurs basically in a number of settings. And we typically think of those settings as political leadership. We think about it as military leadership, business leadership. And it can be in community service, for example. And then on a sort of smaller micro scale, it even exists in our challenges in parenting. So it is a universal aspect of our human lives. And therefore, we need to cast a wide net of understanding where the general principles intersect across all of these various settings. And it's really a mistake for us to think of leadership only in our own individual settings in that narrow tunnel. So I'm a business leader, so I'm just going to think about leadership in the business setting, or I'm a military leader, or I'm a political leader, etc. It's an interesting thing. You know, I teach at Columbia, as you mentioned, and I run a number of open enrollment programs, and I did one last week. It's just an example of this. And I had people there from every potential setting. I had people who were doing community service. I had entrepreneurs. I had people in government service. I had a couple of people in the U.S. Marines. And, of course, I had business leaders as well. I didn't have any political leaders. Each one was offering perspectives through their particular lens and learning from what other people were able to offer through their particular lens. And eventually it was realized, of course, that there are general principles that cut across these various settings. So that's number one in terms of our way of approaching leadership and the way we learn to do it better. The second point about leadership is that it's multidisciplinary. By that, it means it involves personal leadership, it involves strategic leadership, and it involves interpersonal leadership. So these three disciplines really involve looking at leadership through different lenses again. So we've got this intersection between leadership being universal and multidisciplinary. So we need to open our minds much more broadly as we think about it. Now, as I think about it and think about learning more about leadership through those particular areas that you mentioned, first thing that occurs to me is let's define the task of leadership because we want to learn more about it. What's the task? Now, I came across a very nice definition of that task, not from somebody who's a leadership guru, but a psychologist, a guy called Howard Gardner, developmental psychologist at Harvard. And I've read everything this guy has written. He's got great perspectives on the human condition, the human psychology, what motivates us, what demotivates us. And stuck there in the middle of a paragraph about human psychology, I found this gem of a definition of leadership. And I quote it to you. Leaders are those who are able to change the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of those they seek to lead. Now, this intrigued me because if we think just about influencing the behaviors of those we seek to lead, the best we can hope for is compliance. But if we really influence the way they think, the way they feel, we can get commitment. And for me, the whole world of excellence resides in that gap between compliance and commitment. So that's how I began to think about this task. and then begin to explore lessons in leadership, insights in leadership from these three areas. Now, we can dive into them, but briefly, let me give you the logic, if I may. Interrupt me at any point that you like.
Yep. Yep.
Here's
Okay.
why I'm looking at these three areas. First of all, philosophy. Why do I like to study philosophy? Well, simply because it gives us very good answers to life's critically important questions. There are three of these questions. It helps us to find answers to them. What's true? What's important? And what's right? Every time I tackle a problem of any kind or discuss it with my team, let's discover truth. But Nietzsche, another philosopher, reminded us, as we seek truth, we don't find it in facts. We find it in the interpretation of facts, the interpretive power of what's true. Then we extract of all those things that are true, the very few things that matter most, what's important. That helps us to determine what's right. And often we struggle between right and right. Right and wrong, the polar opposites, are fairly straightforward. And when we wrestle between two things, both of which are right, we loop back to what's important to help us resolve that. That's philosophy for me in all of its manifestations. Mm-hmm. Now we come to evolutionary science. That's Charles Darwin's great breakthrough in thinking. In 1859, he wrote this fantastic book, Origin of Species. And it turned the thinking about humanity and where we came from and how we evolved and how we survive. He turned it all upside down. But there's a basic lesson there that we dare not ignore. And that lesson is that in order to survive and thrive in the future, we have to be very, very good at adapting to the external environment. And we have to learn our way there. Hence, learning systems have got the greatest possible chances of adapting successfully to the changing environment. And what's stunning to me is that we've really not done a very good job. If you look at the business world, for example, the lifespan of companies in the S&P 500, in the 1950s, it was about 61 years. At that stage, that was the equivalent of, life expectation at that stage as well, kind of matched up. Now, this is a study by McKinsey. Mm-hmm. The current life expectation of companies on the S&P 500 is 18 years. Companies are dying on average as teenagers. Now, this tells us something. We are not very good at this whole process of adaptation. We need to get better at it. So that's the big message there. And what gets raised there is, what are the techniques? What are the embedded factors that enable organizations to learn more effectively and adapt more successfully? Mm-hmm. So that's that one. And the third area of inquiry for me is astrophysics. It's the biggest subject in the world. It's awe-inspiring, and it's humbling. And for me, what sums it all up is Ray Bradbury's wonderful statement. He was a science fiction writer. Mm-hmm. And his statement is very informative to me, which is as follows. We are born to be witnesses through the mysteries of the universe and to discover who we are, where we fit in, and how to live our lives. Now, it's humbling. We're totally insignificant in the total scale of things in the universe. But here's the lesson I draw. Everything is transient, and so are we. But we have just enough time in our short lives to make a difference. Hi, I'm Willie Peterson. Leadership is not about wielding power. It's about authenticity and inspiring others to achieve a shared purpose. Excelling as a leader is a continuous journey of pursuing ideas that matter as the environment shifts and new challenges emerge. Thank you for watching. Please share your ideas by leaving your comments below. We learn best when we learn together. And if you've enjoyed this discussion, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Thank you again.